Johnathan Kent. All right, so the easy out for Johnathan Kent, analyzing his character, is he is such a nice guy. He is like the picture of wholesome fatherhood, small town, Smallville's own Andy Griffith. He's such a nice guy. He's a good man. He's a good husband. He's just like all around good people, But what I see, again, not to say that there aren't some of those qualities in him. Fine, we can say that there's some of it. But what I see is a guy with a crippling pride problem who's like one step away from turning into a rage monster. His pride has led him to rage and hate in ways that are dangerous and really like horrifying. And the pride in him is so strong and so vicious and so undealt with. Like, he is not acknowledging this pride in himself, and he is not doing anything about this vice, that it becomes so serious, it literally ends his life, okay? I'm saying Johnathan Kent has a vice that is so bad, it literally kills him on the show. So things we see set up about Johnathan Kent early on, and particularly in the pilot episode. In contrast to Lionel Luthor, Johnathan Kent is not raising his own flesh and blood. He is raising a literal alien baby. So, whereas Lionel is raising a son and he already knows a lot of the things that Lex is going to have to face because he's already faced them. And, he's come up with his own strategies for how to cope with this. We can judge those as the series goes on, whether or not he came up with good strategies or not. But regardless, he's come up with his strategies for how to deal with this, and he's passing those on. The best he was able to come up with, he's passing those on to his kid. Jonathan's completely out of his league. He has absolutely no idea what his kid's going to have to face in the future. And it appears that, unlike Lionel, Jonathan's strategy is very much about just hide and delay any conflict that might involve accountability to some kind of outside source. So what he has been doing this whole time, raising this alien baby, is as much as possible keeping it secret. To just, I guess, honestly, what does he think he's going to delay as much as possible? Like, does he think that he's going to be able to go his whole life and maybe he can raise this kid and never let anybody ever find out that he's an alien? And I think, has he even thought this through? Like, that doesn't look like a sustainable path, which we find out, of course, it's not. But that's like what he went with. He went with, I don't feel equal to this, so I'm just going to try and avoid it ever coming to a point where I have to do anything about it. We're just going to hide it as much as possible. We'll tell as few people as possible, as little as possible, and just see how far we can go like that. I personally think that's a cowardly approach, and I don't think it's a prudent approach, and I think it kind of blows up in his face. I'm sympathetic. I get it. He's just there to protect his kid. That's his priority. He wants to protect his son. He wants to protect his family. All right, I understand, but I don't think that was a smart choice at all. Lionel takes the opposite approach. He's very much like, don't try and hide everything. They already know where they're going to find out. It's about survival. It's about taking a head-on approach and having contingency plans, if things blow up in your face. And I think Jonathan looks like he's got no contingency plans. He's just trying to, and I think he like buries himself in his work and stays busy all the time to as somewhat of an escape, I think, from this weight that he's carrying around of how the heck do I parent an alien baby? And I'll just throw out there, because this is an important theme, not just in Jonathan's arc, but because it spreads to everybody. Like, Jonathan, it spreads this all over the place. Is he treats Lex abominably. Like, the way Johnathan Kent treats Lex Luthor is it's totally irrational hate. Like, totally irrational. He is so disgustingly contemptuous of this kid, okay? And Lex is 21 at the beginning of the series? Like, he's a kid, okay? He's young. He's not much older than Clark, right? And I think, like, that Jonathan feels comfortable dumping this irrational, vicious contempt and hate onto this kid because of an experience we find out later, an experience he had. He got his pride wounded seriously back in the day by Lionel Luthor. And I think effectively, we'll get into that later when we get to that episode, but effectively, I think what happened is Johnathan's used to being the alpha dog, okay? I think he's probably spent most of his life feeling like he was in control of the situation, feeling like he was on top of things. And he's been put into a situation where he feels very out of control. And it was by his own choice. He didn't have to adopt an alien baby. He did. So he feels like he's very much out of control and he's struggling to stay in control of this. And then he ends up reaching out to Lionel Luthor for help. Lionel gives him help. But what he doesn't realize is Lionel's a bigger alpha dog than he is, okay? Jonathan's an alpha in his world. Lionel's a bigger alpha in a bigger world. And I think Johnathan just, he couldn't handle it. And I think that the wound he sustained from Lionel, and by the way, the cop-out is to blame Lionel for this and to say, oh, see, it's Lionel's fault that this is all happening. It's not actually Lionel's fault. Now, maybe Lionel was somewhat at fault in that situation. He was manipulative. He was playing his chess game, right? But like, the one who is at fault in this, the one who has caused the greatest amount of woundedness that has caused other people to suffer in this particular situation is Johnathan, okay? It was Jonathan's pride. This would not have lasted nearly as long, and it wouldn't have spilled over onto poor Lex if Johnathan had dealt with his pride. But he didn't, and he sustained this terrible wound of being out-alpha'd by Lionel Luthor. And he just couldn't handle it. He couldn't take it. And he's never forgiven him. And it's just built up into this horrible resentment that he's now taking out on an innocent kid, Lex. So, yeah, I'm sorry, but, you know, the archetype of the perfect father doesn't treat the neighbor's son like that. So that's what I'm seeing in Johnathan Kent. I think a really big part of his MO is actually this pride of his. He's got this terrible, terrible, vicious pride. And it's that encounter that he had with Lionel a long time ago is clearly very present to him even today. Like, he's not worked through any of that. He hasn't processed any of that. He hasn't gotten over any of that. You know, instead of accepting in humility that he can't be in control of everything and he's not all powerful, and just because in his life he's been able to be around people who allow him to stay in control, that doesn't mean he's actually the top dog in the world. And sometimes he encounters people who are bigger dogs than he is, and he's got to learn to deal with that with humility. But he doesn't do that at all. And I don't know, maybe that's even part of what went into how he's decided to parent Clark. Like I'm saying, it's just like a fear of accountability. It's like maybe he's underlying all of this is just this terror of feeling like he's out of control again. And he doesn't know what to do with that. And instead of processing it and figuring out a good way to move forward, he just has decided we're going to try and keep things in a place where I can stay in control. Yeah, see, the more I think about it, the more I that's what I think is going on with Johnathan. Like, he's got a really serious pride issue, and he's got a terrible fear of losing control, losing that feeling of being the alpha. You know, his world is, he lives in a small world. He lives in this, you know, Norman Rockwell, quaint farm life, rural area, right? And in that world, he's the alpha, and he's comfortable there, and he feels in control there, and people respect him, and you know, he knows what's going on. He's the one that sees the most of what's going on, you know, like, it's not other people who know more than he does. He's the one that knows the most, and he feels very comfortable being in that throned position. But he has a couple of experiences, you know, that shake his world here. One of them is encountering, he starts learning about his son, Clark, that he adopts, and realizes he's an alien race that is, in a lot of objective ways, superior to humans. Way stronger, at very least, way stronger than he is. They got, you know, advanced tech and everything. They're space travelers. That comes out. That's not comfortable. So what's his solution to that? Let's just see how long we can go pretending like Clark isn't an alien, okay? Like, let's just hide everything as much as possible and avoid anyone else learning of this. And then he also, connected to this Clark adoption thing, ends up bumping up against these dang Luthors, man. These Luthors, they're just like, they're a powerful force. They're a force to be reckoned with in the world. And they come from a different world than Johnathan, a bigger world, a more dangerous world, a more cutthroat world. They think faster, they reason harder, they're smarter, they notice more. They're paying attention to all these details that Jonathan's used to being around people who won't notice. And the Luthors, dang it, they notice. They take bigger risks. They question things more. They got a lot more power than Johnathan has, and he's not equal to it. He knows that they are more powerful than he is, and it bothers him. And I think Johnathan can sense pretty quickly, like, he figures out pretty quickly that, like, he's out of his league with these guys. And both of them, by the way. Like, it's not just Lionel. Lionel's the one he has the direct head-to-head with. But, like, as Lex is getting older, he's realizing, you know, I think one of the reasons why he keeps treating Lex like he's basically Lionel, like in totally absurd, irrational ways. Like, other characters are reminding him, like, you're talking as though Lex did this. Lex was literally a child when this happened. You know, he was like 9 years old. Okay, it wasn't Lex, it was Lionel. So what's going on? It's like your brain is breaking, Johnathan. But he can sense with Lex, even though he's young, like, Lex is going to be that kind of an alpha. Lex is going to be an alpha like Lionel. Lex is going to be one of the people that makes Johnathan feel small. And so he's putting the hate that he has for Lionel, he's putting it onto Lex. And it makes no sense, and it's totally irrational, and it's emotions ruling him, but that's what he's doing. But I think part of it is it's like, because it's almost not even about what Lionel did, that chess move he made, that manipulation. It's almost not even that itself, even though that's what Johnathan would say, and say, see, he's evil, and they're creepy and dangerous, and they don't care about people, or whatever it is he would say. It's not even about that. It's about how it made him feel. It's about the fact that he had his world shaken, and he felt like, wow, I'm the small dog. I'm the small one. I'm the one that could get taken advantage of. Somebody else could take advantage of me. Somebody else could crunch me if they wanted to. Does he actually think the Luthers will? I don't know. I mean, wouldn't they have done it by now? If they were going to crush you, wouldn't they have already done it? Like, but just that feeling of something there is more powerful than I am makes Johnathan very, very uncomfortable. And it's an interesting juxtaposition because I don't see that in the Luthers. The Luthers, they bump up against people that are more powerful than they are. They encounter, or they find themselves in situations at least where they've got the low ground, right? And they just take it in stride, you know? They get guns waved in their face all the time. They find themselves at a disadvantage, and then, you know, the biggest dogs can fight on anybody's turf. They survive no matter where they find themselves. Jonathan's like, no, the only way I can feel comfortable, the only way I can survive and feel like a man is if I am on my turf and I'm the alpha and I just keep things as rigidly in that space as possible because that's the only place I feel strong. So he's got to stay away from the Luthers. He's got to hide Clark. I mean, heck, you know, most of the time he's got Clark over there and he's using his superpowers for farm work, right? Like, they're living an isolated life on a farm and he keeps Clark hidden and uses him for farm work. And you know, even when Clark actually, like, it's not like he's encouraging Clark to go out and use his powers to save people, right? Like, Johnathan doesn't do that. And even the times that Clark does end up saving somebody's life, like, one of the first things Johnathan is thinking is, did anybody see you? Did anybody see you? Not like, wow, son, that's amazing. You saved somebody. Maybe we should, you know, maybe you should do this more. Maybe you should, you know, think about using your powers for good like that. It's like, no, did anyone see you? Are you going to compromise our existence in this hidden rural area? Like, that's like the first thing on his mind. Other characters are having to remind Johnathan that, like, hey, you know, isn't it great that Clark actually saved somebody's life? Anyways, I think that Jonathan's pride and this encounter with Lionel Luthor right after the meteor shower is running his life and running his decisions way more than people give it credit for.